you take it off. And you do that every day for about maybe 10 days would be enough, and that should clear it up. You'll get all kinds of junk coming out and so forth, and so on. So in terms of the remedy to deal with all that muck coming out, you know, in terms of, you might have a fever, you might have a lot of mucus stagnations coming out, a lot of, you know, I mean, stuff that's been here for, because what happens is that when we dairy and flour, and those two specifically, is the mucus production in this epithelial lining, the mucous epithelial lining, starts to get copious and thick. And it starts to coat the internal lining of the bronchial tube itself in the bronchioles and the alveoli. Right? And what it does is it buries the cilia, so they can't do this. They can't do their job. So everything gets stuck there. So when you start to take particles in from the environment, they gather there. And then they lead to irritation, and that can cause emphysema as well as bronchitis. That's the story. Pneumonia is more for mediating. You know, they both involve having a fever, because fever is a way of getting rid of excess yin, is what fevers do. So, and fevers are good. They're really excellent. You know, if you get, you don't really have to worry about a fever at all. If you know, I have the 4 cardinal signs, which I talk about, like appetite, nausea, vitality, and sleep patterns. All 4 of those have to be negative before you worry about a temperature going above 104. I mean, I've walked around at a temperature of 105. In fact, I gave a lecture over at Gary Smith's place with a temperature of 105. Actually, I had a temperature of 105 when I gave the lecture.
I remember.
What other symptoms did you have that day? Was it a bronchial symptom?
No, it was just a high fever.
Yeah, when my son Rio was just a baby, he had the same, you know, had like 105 temperature, you know, and we just slapped a piece of tofu on his forehead. Went down to like 102 within a short time.
Right.
What do you think you did to have such a high fever?
I was just detoxing. I was macrobiotic. I've had many discharges since I've been macrobiotic. I mean, that particular one, that lasted a month.
Wow.
Yeah, and what was happening was after 7 years of macrobiotic eating, I got rid of the malaria that I had when I was a kid.
Wow.
Wow, I guess I'm very fortunate. I haven't had a
No, you're
discharge in
not.
15 years.
That's not fortunate at all.
I don't have anything to discharge.
Yes, you do.
Everybody does.
Everybody does.
Well, I have little discharges, but no 105-degree temperature.
Yeah, but I feel extremely fortunate that I had it. Very fortunate.
Well, I did. I mean, the first 5 years of being macrobiotic,
you should
I
be getting,
discharged.
I think my take
but-
on macrobiotic way of living is you should be getting a discharge at least every 3-4 years.
Well, I discharge every day, but not like 105-degree temperature type of discharges, because I just don't go out of my...
Well, maybe you didn't have the excesses and extremes that I had when I was growing up.
I'm very excessive and extreme in my day, but
Yeah, like
Well,
but I
drugs.
feel like I've already...
You took drugs.
Well, then where is
Oh,
all
yeah.
that stuff now?
Meat.
Where is all that stuff now if you were so extreme? Because it takes years
Well,
to
it was
discharge.
gone the first 5 years. I mean, I was discharging really hard the first 5 years of my macrobiotic life. But then I was like, okay, I don't want to go through this all the time. So I started restricting a little bit more and a little bit more. And
Yeah, but the
I
point,
just feel
is,
great all the
point,
time.
Well, I do too, even when I had my discharges.
But I haven't had the discharge. I haven't had the 105-degree temperature.
Yeah,
I'm
but
just
so what? I
wondering
mean,
what...
everybody's going to be different. It's not like you're going to be the
Yeah,
same.
your life isn't over
Could you
yet
talk
either.
about cravings a little bit? Because I feel like
Hopefully not.
that's
I'm still here.
a lot
Yeah,
of
we
people
have many
it's
moods
one of the
simultaneously.
things I
Who
like
knows what the fish
I
will
like
do.
Yeah, well, cravings, you see, cravings usually indicate that you're detoxing whatever it is you're craving. So that, as they're coming out, they come through the taste buds, and so you get a really strong craving for them. I tell people that just to satisfy the craving, find something that's really the best quality of whatever it is you're craving, whether it's pizza or beef or, you know, chocolate cake or, I mean, I've seen the gamut, you know, what people crave, you know, peanuts, you know, the whole thing. Find the best quality you can, make sure it is cooked, like if you're peanuts, don't eat raw peanuts. Then you take a small amount of it and you just chew it really, really well. You know, I mean, when I say small amount, maybe like a quarter of a cup, and you just chew it really well. And then if the craving's still there next day, you just do the same thing. And eventually, over a few days, it'll just disappear. So that's what that is. So the mustard plaster, that is going to clear up the lungs on a deep basis. The eucalyptus oil rub or the eucalyptus oil vapor is there for immediate. You know, you're getting constricted, you can't breathe, or you're having great difficulty in breathing, and it'll just open up the channels and help you to breathe a lot more easily.
You know what also is a good tool is the lotus root drink.
Yeah, lotus root drink, but it's not, you know, I never thought it was that effective, but it's good, it's more on a subtle level. And of course, if you have sinuses, now sinuses is a sinus infections of which in this country right now is the leading symptomology of any single one condition. Something like 58 million people have chronic sinus problems. And the sinuses reflect the condition of the large intestine. So, but sinuses can be a real bad. I mean, serious trouble. You know, you get sinus headaches, you can't breathe, it's painful. And so that's where you use the lotus root plaster. You have to buy lotus root. Now this is it's a tricky thing to do, because I've done it. I did it one night, just to say I've done it, right? Because what you have to do is you have to cut out, again, cheesecloth, but you have to cut out eyes and a mouth. So you make a mask and 2 pieces of cheesecloth, and you have to get the lotus root and you grate it as fine as you can. By the way, the greatest grater in the world is called Kyocera, made by Kyocera, and it's a ceramic grater which has a footprint, and the teeth are made in such a way that they cut through ginger like a hot knife through butter. So when you put it on your working surface, this thing stays there because of the footprint. It just grabs onto the table.
What's it called?
Kyocera.
Kyocera?
Kyocera.
Like the printer.
Right. And so you should use that. You should definitely buy one. I mean, they're just a godsend. If you do ginger compresses to any degree, or what you do, any grading of any kind.
Daikon.
And it's circular and it's got a canal. So any juices will be saved.
That's terrific.
And so you have to grate it really fine, and then because you need to have the lotus root hold together, you add a little bit of whole wheat flour to make it hold together, and you make a nice thick, about a half an inch at least thick.
And you put a little ginger in.
Ginger too.
A little bit of ginger, right? A little bit of ginger, just maybe half a teaspoonful of grated ginger. And then you just spread it on the thing, cut open the eye and the mouth, and it's good. You have to sew it up, and then you put two pieces of string or cloth or whatever, so you can tie them on.
I didn't do all of that.
Right, and then you lie down, you have it over there, and then you lie down and you put it on before you go to bed, and you leave it on overnight.
Across your face or your chest?
No, it's for
Your
your
face.
face, for your eyes and
For the
mouth.
sinuses.
Oh, for sinuses, okay.
Because
Right.
I took my cheesecloth and I cut them out about this big, and then I put one here, and then one right here, and I took an ace bandage or a strip of flannel and wrapped it around my head here, and then wrapped it around, and
Well, I
then
did it with that thing. It's not that elaborate. It's pretty easy to do.
sounds pretty elaborate to me.
Not at all. It was really, you didn't have to use an ace bandage at all, any ace bandage. And that's the way it's described in the book, so I just follow the descriptions in the book. Morimoto's, I think it was.
I think when you mentioned that years ago, Cora, I had to try it myself too, just because I love the idea of putting a mask on my face and going to sleep.
Right, and the thing is, I got a story to tell about that.
There's a
There was a
little
guy in
message.
England who had chronic sinusitis, and he worked for the British nuclear regulatory power, and he went to a doctor to see what he could do about his sinus, and his sinus had gotten so thick in his sinuses that it was like chalk. That's how it can get. It gets so hardened in there. And they said, we're going to have to cut you open here and chisel it out.
Oh, please.
I said, I don't think so. I think I'll try to find some alternative to that. So that's when he heard about macrobiotics. He started the macrobiotic diet, and he did the lotus plaster, consistently, plus his way of eating, and it cleared up. And then he was let go. They were having a cleaning out of the workforce, and he got a golden parachute, and he opened a macrobiotic store in Bristol.
Wow.
Pretty cool story.
But isn't it the best thing for sinuses actually to do the bancha tea and salt rinse?
The best thing to do with ginger for the sinuses is the ginger compress on the intestine.
Okay,
But if you want, I'm not going to flush my nose with salt and bancha tea. I'm
oh, I
sorry.
have.
I'm not going to
Back-
do it.
But I was like so shocked at what came out.
Right.
From just bancha and salt?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, you have to
Yes.
flush your nose. You have to.
Oh, all the way through.
Copious amounts of phlegm, it looked like to me.
What color
Must have
was
been
it?
that chalk. Well, back then it was yellowish green when I did it the very first time. And now I do it like routinely, like every couple of months or so, just to clean it out. And it's clear, very
yeah.
clear now.
Right.
And you can really see it, what makes the bancha tea. I'm sure there's other good benefits about the bancha tea, but it really shows the amount that's coming out, and it like coats the phlegm, and you see it in the sink. Whereas if you just use like white plain water and salt, warm water and salt, you don't see that. Because I've tried it both ways. And I know that stuff should be coming out, but I don't see it like I do as readily when I'm using the tea.
Right, so if you want to do a
So I think it
nasal
pulls it.
flush with salt water, salty bancha tea, you're welcome to try it. But I've never done it, so I can't tell you.
What is it, like
Oh,
a neti?
It's
type of thing?
really wonderful. I mean, you can just breathe so much better afterwards. It's
Like
so-
a neti pot? I mean.
No,
similar
that
thing?
doesn't work as well.
How do you do
So,
it?
yeah, so how do you do
Well, what I do is I take a teacup, and you just have you have to practice, and you just breathe it into your nose till you're like vision it being just like right to here, and then you hold it. You can let it come all the way through, and it's either going to go down your throat or come out your mouth. So, if it's not